Tonight, the family of a woman who died after being restrained by security guards at Toronto General Hospital files a $16 million lawsuit against the hospital and those involved.
There have been failures all across systems in this case.
The family of Stephanie Warrener alleging the guards' actions were reckless and directly caused her death. The lawsuit coming a week after charges against two of the guards were dropped. Plus,
it's really scary, and then you think about what if this happens to me?
Another incident on the TTC putting some riders on edge. Toronto police are looking for a suspect after an alleged hate-motivated assault at the Bloor-Yonge station. And
obviously, Ontarians deserve answers. The whole point of this is to shine a light, I think, in some of the dark corners.
Ontario's Integrity Commissioner and the Auditor General launching separate investigations into the Ford government's plan to open protected greenbelt lands up to housing development. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. The family of Stephanie Warrener has filed a $16 million lawsuit against the University Health Network and several of its security guards. The 43-year-old Warrener died after being restrained chest down by security guards at Toronto General Hospital in May of 2020. The lawsuit alleges her death was the direct result of the guards' actions that day, calling them reckless and excessive. Chris Glover with this story.
This Toronto General Hospital security video from May 2020 is now the center of a $16 million lawsuit. It shows part of an interaction that resulted in the death of 43-year-old Stephanie Warrener, her sister alleges.
To lose your family member in such a catastrophic way is debilitating. And I don't think that it will ever leave me. I am seeking accountability from at least one system. And I am seeking change. I want systems to really take a hard look at themselves and identify where there are gaps and problems, correct them.
Criminal charges against two of the hospital guards were dropped last week when, despite this video, a judge ruled there wasn't enough evidence. That's after a forensic pathologist testified at a preliminary trial that Stephanie would still be alive had she not been restrained that day, and one of the guards admitted he falsely claimed Stephanie threw the first punch. In the Warrener family lawsuit, 5 guards are named, including the one who admitted to intentionally moving the security camera during the interaction. The lawsuit also names the University Health Network, alleging the guards had no lawful authority to apprehend Stephanie or to place her in handcuffs, arguing the force used was excessive, unreasonable, not justified by law, and was applied with malice and intent of injury. Back in May 2020, Stephanie was presumed to have COVID and was spotted walking in the hospital with her mask around her neck. The lawsuit alleges negligence, arguing hospital staff knew she suffered from a chronic lung condition and bipolar disorder. It also seeks accountability for the death of one of Stephanie's 5 children, Daisy, alleging Daisy went into a downward spiral after her mother's death and ultimately died of an overdose.
She was 23 years old. She was beautiful, and she was also a victim of her mother's death, her mother's killing. This is how generational wounds play out. This is the ripple effect. It has ravaged an entire family.
UHN says it won't comment because the case is before the courts. The family's lawyer says none of the defendants have filed statements of defense, but all intend to fight the legal action. Meantime, while the family's allegations have yet to be tested in court, Denise hopes one day she can shift away from the painful end of her sister's life to focus on the happy memories they shared together. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
A 13-year-old student is facing charges tonight after what police say was a robbery with a replica firearm inside an Etobicoke school. Parents of students at Lenore Junior Middle School say the incident has them concerned.
Well, obviously, as a parent of 2 kids who go here, it obviously makes us a little bit nervous. But at the same time, we know that the school is doing everything possible to make sure that our kids remain as safe as possible.
I know it's a fake, but still the parents need to be very careful whatever the kids take toys to their school. Yeah, it's very concerning because right now there's a lot of guns at the school and sort of things are going around.
The school is located near Browns Line and Evans Avenue in Etobicoke. According to police, just after 3 p.m. yesterday, students at the school had a replica gun pointed at them and a demand was made for money. Investigators say there were 2 separate incidents. This afternoon, police say they've charged a 13-year-old male student at the school with 2 counts of robbery with a weapon. Toronto police are searching for a man wanted in what they're calling a hate-motivated attack after a person had their religious head covering knocked off at a subway station this morning. The TTC releasing a statement tonight condemning the act, adding that the safety of its riders and staff is paramount and that they are assisting police with the investigation. Del Manukduk has more.
Police responded to an assault here at Bloor Yonge subway station this morning around 8:30. They say a man struck the victim on the head, causing a religious head covering to be dislodged and then fall to the ground. The man then allegedly said some derogatory comments towards the individual before leaving the scene.
That's absolutely unacceptable. There's no room for hate crimes, especially on the TTC in public.
I think that's awful because I think we're a multicultural city and, usually people don't put up with that.
Toronto police have released an image of the suspect. You can see that he's wearing a blue hat, a black jacket, and carrying a black bag. The investigation is being treated as a suspected hate-motivated offense. In a short statement, Mayor John Tory says our transit system and city at large must be safe places for all and free of hatred without exception. Earlier this month, Tory touted some $53 million in new TTC spending, largely focused on making the subway system safer in the wake of some violent incidents. Just 2 weeks ago, a man was pushed onto the tracks here at Bloor Yonge Station. Last spring, the same thing when a 39-year-old woman was pushed onto track level. In both cases, individuals were arrested and charged. There have also been homicides across the system over the past year, including a woman being set on fire at Kipling Station, and just last month, a woman was stabbed and killed at High Park Station.
I've actually stopped taking the TTC so much because of those things. Like I've actually resorted to taking the GO train more often just because it's quieter, it's safer.
It's not comfortable anymore on the TTC, but I don't know what you can do about it because unless you put people like security people on the trains.
Police are asking that anyone with information regarding this latest alleged hate-motivated attack contact them or Crime Stoppers. Del Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Budget consultations continued in the city today with residents in Etobicoke and Scarborough voicing their opinions about what the city has planned for this year. An increase in funding for police remains a top item for many.
I support community policing. A lot of people don't understand what that is, but that is where the police are engaging directly with the community that they're serving. And the way they hire it is different than the way they used to hire officers in the past.
North says what's needed is officers who understand the neighborhoods they are in, especially for those in marginalized communities. The Toronto Police budget is set to be increased by $48 million this year, with a goal of hiring 200 more officers. That would bring the total budget to $1.16 billion. Council will consider the mayor's budget at a special meeting on Wednesday, February 14th. Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first check on your forecast. And Colette, a wintry mix moving in with some freezing rain to contend with as we head into tomorrow.
Yeah, it's really going to be another one of these days where we have a wintry mix, different types of precipitation, but that real risk that we could see a few hours of freezing rain or at least ice pellets kind of mixing with freezing rain at times. And so we're looking at a wide area for the freezing rain warning, more of this earlier in the day than perhaps late for the city, that is. And the closer that you are for the lakeshore, to the lakeshore, more of a chance it'll be mixing with rain at times. You notice it doesn't extend into the Niagara region or southwestern Ontario along the north shore of Lake Erie. There it's going to be more of a rain event, and in some cases back towards southwestern Ontario you may be seeing 20 to 30 or 40 millimeters of rain. But it's snowfall into eastern Ontario, again probably a wintry mix at times, but the accumulations could be 5 to 10 centimeters, and that's why that area has a winter weather travel advisory. So timing on this after midnight as it pushes or continues pushing through the southwestern portions of the province. There it is, starts as some wet snow, mixing quite a bit, but we stay into the cooler slot for most of the morning. Really early morning commuters might get out on the roads before this starts in the GTA, but I think it's going to be kind of a close call there. And then extending into the afternoon, we get a break, a breather, and then more coming in and some heavier rain. That's where you get the accumulations more significant there back towards Windsor, Chatham, Kent, Leamington, some of these areas because of that rainfall. That will push through. Colder air is going to filter in, and we even get into some flurries and possible accumulations in the city, although they'll be lighter. I'll have more detail on that coming up, and we'll take a deeper dive, too, into any ice accretion or buildup of ice that we may see. Overnight tonight, though, there's that temperature right at freezing, and then tomorrow afternoon, 2 degrees. And I do have to also mention very strong easterly winds with this system passing through.
Thanks so much, Colette. 2 separate investigations are going ahead into the province's controversial Greenbelt plan. Ontario's Integrity Commissioner and the Auditor General will both look into the Ford government's decision to open up the protected lands to housing development. As Lorena Redicott reports, the investigations were launched following requests from all 3 provincial opposition parties.
Something smells fishy here, and Ontarians deserve answers.
Incoming NDP leader Marit Stiles sent requests to both the Integrity Commissioner and the Auditor General, both now investigating. The Integrity Commissioner finding reasonable and probable grounds to conduct an inquiry. However, it is not going ahead with a request by the Green Party leader, saying there were insufficient grounds. And it notes one difference between the 2 complaints. Ms. Stiles did not include the Premier as a subject of her request. Stiles does name Housing Minister Steve Clark in her request.
The government's change of heart, their sudden decision change, is going to benefit and make a lot of money for a very few people.
This is after the government took some land out of the Greenbelt, opening it up for housing, a big switch from a previous promise. Some of that land changed hands in the months before. The Integrity Commissioner says there's no evidence either the Premier or the Minister advanced their private interest, but that the question is whether they advanced the interest of any of the landowners. A spokesperson for Clark says the minister looks forward to being cleared of any wrongdoing. In Stiles' request, she also raises questions about Clark's former chief of staff, who left last April, Luca Bucci, including whether there was improper lobbying. He became the CEO of the Ontario Home Builders Association last June.
That is an organization with strong ties to developers.
The other investigation by the Auditor General comes after a joint request by all 3 opposition party leaders, the government promising to fully cooperate and provide more detail. The Green Party leader acknowledges there are limits to what could come from either investigation. Both will result in a report.
But the court of public opinion is powerful, and the people of Ontario need to know the truth. There needs to be transparency and accountability around these land deals that do not pass the smell test.
The OPP says it's still conducting a review on whether it will investigate the government's Greenbelt plan. Lorena Redicott, CBC News, Toronto.
A 63-year-old man from Brantford has been reunited with his custom wheelchair in Chile. When Jim Hamilton arrived in Santiago on Monday, representatives from Air Canada told him the wheelchair didn't make the trip with him. Tyler Cheese spoke with Hamilton's stepdaughter about the ordeal.
A wheelchair is not a piece of luggage. It's not a piece of sports equipment. It's not an accessory.
Wendy Elliott feels helpless and angry on her stepfather's behalf.
I think anybody that's had a piece of luggage taken can understand how frustrating just that is. You can replace clothing or toothbrushes. This is something that he relies on to move for his life. It's just so unacceptable.
Jim Hamilton and his wife Kathy arrived in Santiago Monday morning. It's the first trip the couple has been able to take since Hamilton suffered a stroke 2 years ago that left him using a wheelchair. They were shocked to discover the wheelchair hadn't made the trip with them.
My mom's looking around for his actual custom wheelchair, and it was nowhere to be found.
After searching the airport in Santiago, Air Canada supplied Hamilton with a $300 voucher and a loaner wheelchair. But the replacement chair wasn't fitted to Hamilton's needs, and it came with a broken footrest. CBC Toronto has confirmed today that the lost wheelchair has been returned to Hamilton in Chile. But disability advocates say instances of ableism like this one are a huge problem in the travel sector.
This is a systemic issue. This is not a one-off mistake. This is pure negligence.
Last year, Ziv's wheelchair was also damaged on an Air Canada flight. The airline has since agreed to cover the cost of a replacement. But Ziv would like to see updates to the Canada Accessibility Act to better protect people with disabilities when they travel.
We don't yet see enough teeth in that legislation to actually hold airlines accountable.
Other experts say airlines and policymakers need to invite people who use mobility devices to be part of the decision-making process when it comes to accessible travel.
We need proper assurances, policy, government level, making sure that we have the much needed policy and practices in place by giving people with disabilities the opportunity to be part of the solution.
In the meantime, Hamilton and his wife are just thankful to have his wheelchair back in time to leave for a cruise on Friday. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. The TDSB has a new initiative that aims to show students the world of opportunity that awaits them after graduating. The Centre for Black Youth Achievement arranged for neighborhood schools in the Jane and Finch area to tour Westview Centennial today to see firsthand all it has to offer. Alicia Song spoke to the coordinators and the students about what they learned.
Westview Centennial Secondary is an impressive school, both in scale.
It's very gigantic and you can get lost literally anywhere.
And in course offerings. There's so much more than math and English here, and that's exactly what these grade 8s are getting a crash course in.
I did end up liking my first class, which was auto/transportation, and I actually lifted up a tire, and I'm proud of myself for that.
The healthcare was pretty fun. We learned what to do in nursing and stuff, making nursing beds, helping people, and it was pretty fun.
My first class was the auto shop, and then I think I went to healthcare, and then I went to cosmetology.
Hey, not every class is going to be a perfect fit for everyone.
What'd you think? It was weird, but then I got used to it. Then I got my hand waxed, and then...
Even if I didn't like it, I still pushed myself to do at least one thing in the classroom.
And that's huge. It can be intimidating to try something new in a new setting.
At first, when I first came here, I was shy a little bit. I was nervous.
But the minute they were in auto shop or masonry and they were learning and their hands were busy and they were actually doing something, it didn't matter. It didn't matter who was working with who.
It doesn't matter now whether you're from this school or that school, you're helping me and we're accomplishing this task. So it's very impactful to see authentic and organic, relationships being formed right in the classrooms.
Which is good not just for school community, but the community as a whole.
Jane and Finch has such a strong sense of community.
The TDSB's Center of Excellence for Black Student Achievement organized today's school swap.
Yeah, I'm a Jane and Finch native, and I think about all of the educators that, did something like this for me to be able to, move me into the career path that I want to head into, and I'm looking at now how I'm paying it forward.
The hope is that after today, the middle schoolers look forward to attending Westview Centennial, where picking a career path is like a choose-your-own adventure.
They're coming to an industry near you, so look out for them.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
And you are looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline. It is partly cloudy this evening with the city under a freezing rain warning. Currently, it is about 2 degrees downtown. Let's go back to Colette now with a look at your extended forecast. And Colette, the morning commute expected to be a slick one for many tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be a situation with some heavy rain for southwestern Ontario, but slick in terms of freezing rain. And the warning I was showing earlier in the show, which does include the GTHA. So we have that in place. Also some very strong easterly winds and winter weather travel advisories north and east of the city. And then some of these flurries lingering into Friday. We could have a few centimeters of accumulation, up to maybe 3 or 4 for the GTA. So we'll get into all of that. Let's time you through this too, as it's been just kind of making its way into southwestern Ontario, where there's going to be a few rounds of this. Starts off as this wintry mix, probably some kind of wet snow mixing with ice pellets and or freezing rain at times. But if you watch how it tracks through, as we stay right around freezing until the afternoon when it gets up to 2 degrees. Elsewhere in the Niagara region, it'll be a little milder and stays as rain all the way along the north shore of Lake Erie back towards Windsor. But this is where we get a lot of mixing, and then further north it's more of that snow. And it's from the morning commute for the GTHA, and it carries on until the afternoon, although it will weaken and change in form to more of a liquid precip. And then we get another round that comes through. And this next batch, I do want to say, as it passes through Windsor and Leamington, maybe even Sarnia, but probably a little further south, you're going to get a shot of some heavy rain, even an embedded thunderstorm not out of the question there. Yes, in January. And then we take it into Friday, and guess what lingers behind? Some colder air, enough to bring some wet flurries through the area and carrying on. A look at ice accretion, and kind of just wanting you to see, really, it's probably a few millimeters to up to 4, but that target area west of the city, near London, Waterloo, Wellington through Kitchener, those regions you could see more significant amounts of freezing rain or a longer duration. And then some of the snowfall amounts. I don't want you to get excited about this in Toronto. This is further north towards the lakeshore. It's probably going to be only a few centimeters, but some of the models are starting to bump these up a little bit, and that's more what's kind of interesting here, is to see that there is the potential it could be a bit more significant. But a messy day Thursday, no doubt about it, improving Friday, and you might notice there's another system for the second half of the weekend.
Finally tonight, Canada still doesn't have a team in the WNBA, but we could be one step closer to that happening. A preseason game will be held at Scotiabank Arena this spring, something the league may use to gauge interest from fans.
Toronto is kind of on the top 2 ranking at this moment between Toronto and Oakland. So that's kind of where it's looking. So I would say it's more to bring the Canadian audience and become more engaged prior to an expansion franchise being formalized.
The game will feature the Minnesota Lynx and the Chicago Sky and will take place on May 13th. At least one Canadian is expected to suit up for that game, with Chatham, Ontario's Bridget Carleton playing for the Lynx. This will be the first time a WNBA game has ever been played in Canada. There have been calls for some time now to add a Toronto team to the league, including from rapper Drake. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Chris Glover has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.